Today we are going to be talking about the difference between C of O, meaning certificate of occupancy, and deed of assignment. Welcome again to the Law and High. It is your host Folakemi Jegede. I like pronouncing my name. It gives the meaning of that name, Folakemi Jegede. In case you're asking, it means uh, God has used wealth to take care of me, something like that. So you're welcome again to the Law and I. The Law and I is where law is made simpler and life is made better. And today we have another good topic that I'm bringing to you, our audience, that we also impact you. And I know a lot of times, especially our audience from diaspora, even if you're in Nigeria, you want to buy land and you have been mixing up this particular two documents, which is very important actually, which are CFO and deed of assignment. All these two documents forms the legality of documentation in property in Nigeria. So today we are going to be talking about the difference between C of O, meaning certificate of occupancy, and deed of assignment. So what is C of O? Certificate of occupancy. It is a government issued document that shows that someone, whether you're an individual or corporate, has been granted ownership or occupancy rights under the Land Use Act to occupy this particular property. I'll say it again. C of O, certificate of occupancy, is issued by the government to an individual or a body, whether a corporate body or a company, granted to you to show that you have been given an occupancy right over a piece of land or a property for a period of 99 years. When you have a certificate of occupancy, that means that that place that you have been given that occupancy right is for a period of 99 years. Say it after me. 99 years. Yes. And this is as provided for under the Land Use Act 1978. Yes. And in Lagos State, for example, where we are shooting this video from, the Ministry of Lands are the one in charge where you process the certificate of occupancy, and it is a form that the government is giving you rights to own and occupy that land for a period of 99 years. So you are like, it's like a lease, quote and unquote, between you and the government. If you know, for knowledge of people that don't know, that all land in a state belongs to the government, they are holding it as a trustee for everyone in the state. So when you have that certificate of occupancy, they are leasing that land to you, that property to you for 99 years. I hope you understand the meaning of C of O, certificate of occupancy. So let's talk about the deed of assignment. What is the meaning of deed of assignment? A deed of assignment is a document that has been executed between the seller and the buyer, showing that the ownership has been transferred to the seller. And this contains the details of the seller, the details of the buyer, the address of the property in question. A lot of times it also shows the history of the land, which we call the reciter, and you will see consideration, which is the amount of money that have been transferred from the buyer to the seller. And you will also see a clause like the seller has transferred all his or her beneficial right to the buyer. I hope you understand that all these things are what forms part of the deed of assignment. Let me just branch a bit. A lot of times you execute what we also call contract of sale before the deed of assignment. Contract of sale is a bit different from deed of assignment. Contract of sale does not bestow title or transfer of ownership, as it were, to the buyer. What contract of sale only shows is that there have been a transaction and money consideration between the two parties in respect of the said land or the property. While deed of assignment clearly shows that the seller, who supposedly is supposed to be the owner, has transferred his or her right to the buyer based on the consideration that have been agreed by the parties. I hope you understand now the meaning of deed of assignment. What is the difference between the certificate of occupancy and deed of assignment? The first one, like we explained earlier in the meaning, the certificate of occupancy, popularly called the COO, is issued by the government. Why the deed of assignment is a document executed between the buyer and the seller. Of course, I've also explained the peculiarities that must be inside the deed of assignment. Let me branch a bit. A lot of times I've seen when doing verification and test for properties to verify the authenticity, I'm always of the opinion and I always ask, what is the remaining years in the certificate of occupancy? Because if you have a certificate of occupancy that is remaining 20 years, for example, and a developer want you to invest in that property, and the property is remaining 20 years, and the developer is promising you 40 years, you see that there's something wrong somewhere. Of course, you can always renew your certificate of occupancy, but knowledge is power. When you know that the CFO is about to expire, there is a responsibility on you to ensure that that CFO is renewed, not just assuming that you still have more lifespan. So it is very important for you to know in the differences that the CFO is issued by the government and is for 99 years and it is renewable. Why the deed of assignment is a document executed between a buyer and a seller. Then, what is the function? For the CFO, it grants you the right of occupancy of the said land. Why for the deed of assignment, it grants you transfer of ownership from the owner to the seller. That is one of the difference. Then the third one is when you are the one that has the certificate of occupancy. When you are selling it, the buyer in question, what the buyer in question will do is to regularize that certificate of occupancy to his or her name. So let me do a scenario. If Mr. A, for example, has a certificate of occupancy and want to sell the same property to Mrs. B, Mr. A will execute a deed of assignment showing that he is transferring his title to Mrs. B. Mrs. B will regularize the deed, go to land and register the deed of assignment and process C of O, regularization C of O, in her name. That means Mrs. B will end up having a C of O in her name and also have an executed deed of assignment. I hope you understand my illustration. Another thing that we will talk about as to difference between the certificate of occupancy and deed of assignment is that the deed of assignment is executed by the buyer and the seller, while the certificate of occupancy is issued by the governor in the Ministry of Lands. Another thing that we also talk about is that the CFO is showing registration of land, while a deed of assignment shows sale of land. I hope you understand all these differences that I have mentioned. So in short, the CFO shows that the land is recognized by the government, while the deed of assignment shows that you legally bought the land from the owner. So why both are important, you need the deed of assignment to prove the sale. You need to register your deed also with the government, like as I explained earlier with Mrs. B, to process your governor's consent, to process that the owner has sold the property to you so that you can have your own CFO in your name. Then you need the CFO to perfect your title. CFO is very important. Whether you want to get loan, you want to resell, you want to mortgage, you want to develop a safety ownership and of your property, CFO is important. If you have one and you don't have the other, it means that you have not perfected your title. To put it all together, CFO don't transfer title. This assignment does. The two documents are important in ownership and transferring of title. So, when you want to buy a property in Nigeria or you want to own a property here in Nigeria and you are asking questions, ask relevant questions. Is the property registered? Do they have a valid CFO? Is there deed of assignment? And every other document that you may need depending on the peculiarity of where the property is located. I hope you understand all the explanation today. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Don't hesitate to share this video with your friends, your family, and your network. And if you have any further questions, drop it in the comments. We do well to respond to it. The Law and High is where law is made simpler and life is made better. Thank you.